The phenomenon of birch bark letters, for which Russia is known throughout the world, clearly indicates that a writing system existed in ancient Russia, with the birch bark craft considered to be originally Russian. On the 26th of July 1951, medieval letters on birch bark were found at the Nerovsky archaeological site in the city of Veliki Novgorod, marking the world's first discovery of its kind. The 11th of April is known as Birch Day or Birch Sap Day because of the sap flow. The sap does not flow along the trunk of a birch, rather it flows in that layer between the wood and the birch bark. That's why the tree lives. The birch grows quickly and can have a lifespan of 55 years, if I'm not mistaken. Once the tree is mature, it's ready. From that point on, it begins declining. There's no need to restore it, it reproduces naturally. No special care is required, yet this is more valuable wood. Every year, under the lease agreement, we renew forests and plant trees. We plow between trees. Each wood type has its own technical requirements for the types of soil for it and types of trees to be planted. We plant seedlings between 2 and 3 years old, with 3,500 to 4,000 young trees per hectare. And then, during the next, 5 to 7 years, we do the maintenance, trampling the grass, cutting the undesired wood. If we have planted conifers, it should be a conifer section, and so both aspen and birch are felled. Let's say there are 50 houses in each village, all heated mainly with birch firewood. How much wood is wasted just to be burned, right? And for some reason, nobody seems to bother to ask, are we harming nature or not? When passing through a village, you see a huge pile of firewood. No one seems to question whether it's damaging the environment. Perhaps it had an effect on me, with me veering off into the forestry industry. In the beginning, I bought forest sites, and then I leased them. So I think it's in the blood, it's in the genes. I'm a mechanical engineer, but I started doing this. I'm not trained in forestry. I worked in a state timber industry enterprise, following in my father's footsteps. My father spent his whole career in that trade. I worked in southern Kuzbas. I was the manager of a woodworking factory. I had huge workshops, loading, unloading, sawing sleepers, chipped wood. We would set off 200 kilometers from the city for procuring. A birch forest was there. Well, that has to be negotiated. They won't just let you in to get you what you need. It's dangerous there. So we arrive. We have been there for more than a day, living there. Then they end their working day and they let us in. Here is this plot. Here is this block you can stock up. So we do. Well, next they cut the trees, move them around, and when the volume is low, usually in the 20th century, craftsmen had a taboo of sorts, a sense of self-respect. They don't source their material within 10 to 20 kilometers from villages. I was a university student in Moscow when I went into a souvenir shop on Nikolskaya Street and saw bast shoes there. I took a look and asked, "You need more of these?" They say, "Can you make shoes of bast?" So I go, "Yes, I can." They say, "Go see the director then." Well, I met the director and explained the situation. He says, "Well, if you can do it, go for it, 500 pairs." For me it was quite a lot, but I said, "Okay then." But as we were in Moscow and there was no material at all, I thought about going to my native place to get some. A bit later, a hurricane went through Moscow's parks, knocking down a lot of trees. I went to several parks, and fallen trees were being sawn already. The workers helped me, and I got myself some birch bark without leaving Moscow. During the exam session, we made the requested volume and took the shoes to this souvenir shop. When they paid us for the bast shoes, we were very happy, because it was more than my salary. Birch is like a weed. The more you cut it, the faster it grows back. Here is what a peasant would say. He says, "There is a birch here near the water tower." I tore off some bark from it and can see that after a few years it has grown back. This is the attitude of rural craftsmen to procuring their materials. Birch bark crafts have a long history in Russia. It could be found in every province of the Russian Empire. Birch bark craftsmen made household items such as the tuas or pesta. a small and large birch bark basket respectively, used for carrying mushrooms and berries. Wholesaling middlemen would buy these goods off craftsmen and deliver them to towns and villages throughout Russia. The birch bark craft flourished in northern Russia, the Volga region, and in such forested areas as the Urals, eastern Siberia, and the Russian Far East. Since the 17th century, as in other industries and crafts, there have been dynasties, passing on knowledge from one craftsman to another. Birch bark was used to weave the well-known bast shoes, which were quite comfortable and practical footwear in a peasant home, and not a sign of poverty. Birch bark was also used to make rattles for small children, called sharkunok, toys for developing motor skills, salt shakers, boxes for carrying liquids, skoloten, and other household items. This is scraping. Scraping is mainly done in northern Russia. Birch bark is very hard to peel there because of the harsh climate. Once birch bark is peeled off with a great effort, this natural cambium remains. It's then adorned with a national ornament. Birch bark was so antiseptic that it prevented food from spoiling, so it was used to store grain and some dairy products, even fish. Small birch bark baskets called tuesas were traded at the fair, the kind that reminds of matryoshka nest dolls. This nested storage approach is remarkable for its peasant rationality. When it was necessary to bring a large number of products and goods to the fair, they made baskets of different sizes and put them inside each other to deliver them. Birch bark is a very hot-resistant material. If you see a fallen birch tree in the forest, the inside may be rotten, but the bark is still growing. Why is it preserved so well? Because it has several acids. The same reason it burns well and can preserve food nicely. Because it has all these properties that strengthen the bark. Of course, it is waterproof. Water can be safely stored in a tues basket and nothing will leak out. In the Ryazan Kremlin, birch bark was also used as a lining between rows of logs. Some birch bark inserts were used to improve the waterproofing of houses. In order to make the back of the boot last for as long as possible and to prevent the heel from being crushed, in the Middle Ages, townspeople of Pereslavl and Ryazan made all sorts of inserts from birch bark into their leather footwear. Birch bark was one of the most important materials for crafts. It was used for writing and drawing. It was used to make various vessels and storage containers, as well as fishing floats. Here we have a rather interesting piece, the mana bukarashnica. These items were made in the Krasnoyarsk region and were mainly intended for fishermen, who kept some sort of live bait in them. Birch bark preserves the properties of food and other products quite well, so this is generally a rather handy item to use. It's not afraid of moisture, it easily survives falling, it's very practical. These included the wicker cradle rocking up and down, called zipka, rattle for small children, called sharpunok, and box or vessel, called tues. One such wonderful form of folk art, one might say, is musical instruments made from birch bark. These are shepherds' trumpets, not bugles or horns, but trumpets that shepherds would blow into at dawn to gather their flocks. This item underpins the whole musical culture of the Russian north and other regions, and peasant life as a whole. Because shepherds playing such tunes really makes a part of folklore. Good shepherds were highly sought after. There were special gatherings where shepherds demonstrated their skills. That's where horn ensembles originated from that would give concerts, and in Soviet times became part of the 20th century folklore tradition. Many poems and songs have been written about the birch. In 1992, for example, the famous composer Vladimir Pipekin wrote the song that was called Wonderful Tueso. I went to Mongolia with the Omsk folk ensemble that sang this song there. So they came out, sang one song to a huge hall of about 1,000 spectators. Then sang another, but somehow there was no reaction. Then they took my works to the stage. The audience got amused and fascinated, and I capped it off with my imitation of bird songs using birch bark. And I was called back twice for an encore. Shut the door, please. We are sometimes accused of damaging the forest and all that sort of thing. If you take the famous Brockhaus and Ephron Encyclopedic Dictionary and look under the column birch bark, it reads as follows. In the late 19th century, experiments were performed to see whether removing bark from trees caused damage. The findings suggest that when you remove the bark, which is the outer layer, you leave the cambium intact, and within 8 to 9 years the bark grows back in that place. So, the dictionary says, what was birch bark mainly used for? For distillation of tar. Birch bark was sold on the markets in huge sheets. The dictionary also says that the first time the bark is stripped, it can produce more tar, but after 8 or 9 years, once it has grown back, it can be peeled again. But this time the bark has 30% less tar-generating capacity. This proves that stripping the bark off a birch tree does not harm the tree. And after 8 to 9 years, the bark grows back. Birch is a unique tree. Birch provides nourishment, healing, and something to drink, because people take sap from birch. It's valuable. Tar is made. Timber industry enterprises may not let you collect birch bark when they have a plan for tar, too. Tar is used to make medicine. Birch fungus is wholesome. It's used to make tea. There is also timber, banyabesoms, well, the whole bit. Birch buds, too. In the old days, there were state procurement organizations that harvested everything that grew in the forest, mushrooms, berries. A school could get an assignment to collect, let's say, 10 kilos of birch buds. Well, just like now, several tons of tar have to be processed and sent to Siberian factories to make medicines or cosmetics. The ancients had the same technologies. The birch in the taiga area, whether in Siberia or in America, is the same. So the design of the Native Americans' birch bark boat is exactly the same as that of the Evenks or Nanai. The Muscovite Russia customs books recorded many birch bark kayuk boats. They were used on the rivers in the Russian northwest, the Dvina, the Vychegda, the Sukhona, the Pinega, and the Pechora. In 2007, I built my first boat, which immediately proved its worth. On a small expedition in this boat, we traveled 140 kilometers along the Yuk and Pushma rivers to Ustyu. We took it up a notch the following year, going in this boat from Kotlas to Arkhangelsk. The most famous expedition was the archaeological expedition with the staff of the Solovetsky Museum Preserve, including the archaeologist Alexander Martynov. Helped by our fellow birch bark craftsmen, we spent 3 days building the boat on the White Sea shore, and then we went as far as the Solovetsky Islands. The ancients built such boats using just one tool, a stone knife, as we call it. Birch bark is peeled with this knife, branches are also removed with this knife. No wood is used other than branches of willow, spruce, wild cherry, and pine. It takes 3 days to collect the materials and another 3 days to build the boat. This is a nomads, hunters, fishermen's boats that they all used like we use a bicycle in the modern age. I mean, every day during the warm season, they were out there in these boats for fishing and hunting. A very reliable boat, and above all, the material is readily available. Today, very few craftsmen use traditional techniques. Traditions are on the wane, but they must be kept, as all of them have to do with ensuring vital functions. Well, for one, the boat wouldn't have lasted long if I had sewn it with metal thread instead of pine roots. Or if I had used a modern sealant instead of spruce resin, who knows what would have happened, and perhaps these expeditions would not have been successful because the technology was not followed. Moreover, all Siberian peoples keep their traditions because they are directly connected with their way of life, with their safety and security. Dog sledges or chum tents must be made in accordance with the tradition. There is no other way. The fashion for Russian style and Russian arts and crafts began in the late 19th century. At the 1900 Paris Exposition, the works of Russian artisans were exhibited, including items of birch bark, and in its wake our craftsmen got many orders from all over the world. In order to improve the quality of craftsmanship, the Stroganov Academy was founded in Russia in the 19th century. The Russian industry was rapidly developing at the time, and there was such a flow of mass-produced goods, so attempts to preserve the high level of craft tradition began as early as in the mid-19th century. After the October Revolution of 1917, a massive effort was made to establish a government support system for folk arts and crafts, which in the 20th century became a very important part of the art industry, generating revenue for both the state and the craftsmen. Many of these highly artistic works by craftsmen, including Shemogotskaya open-work birch bark items, were exported, becoming a major source of income. This allowed our country to develop its economy and to preserve its cultural heritage. Our task is to bring together leading craftsmen and to ensure their representation in the Altai region, internationally and in Russia, and to help all beginners. Thanks to the regional governor's support, we got our office space. So every year, the Ministry of Culture pushes us to apply for a grant. We would successfully apply and toured the Altai region. My job is to find fledgling craftsmen and help them and work with kids. We traveled through 33 regional districts. Everywhere we made an exhibition and a free workshop. In rural areas, there were usually queues of kids from the morning. We were provided with our own building, office space, and all our utilities were fully paid for us. During our tours of the region, our craftsmen would sell their works at exhibitions. It all begins with an idea, a concept. Next you make sketches. Once they are ready, you need to make templates. You make all this out of cardboard, putting it all together. How will it be fixed? Will it hold the weight? It all depends on the material. Just these notches count 3,600. I made all of them with my chisel. 36,000 is how many times I needed to hit it. Any item takes very long. There are all sorts of birch bark craftsmen in the 21st century, but most of them make birch bark crafts their hobby, as an extra income. In the past, peasants would use birch bark for all household purposes. They used it for roofing and construction, and lots of utensils were made from birch bark. So the saying is true. If it went for bast and birch bark, the Russian peasant would fall apart. Nowadays, people try to make artistic products in order to sell them for more or to attract attention. There are 3 lines of work. You can make souvenirs or popular household items or art objects. There was that event in France, Days of the Altai region. I made 60 of these there, but not a single one went. This is close to mass production. They mostly bought bread boxes off me. There it cost probably 10 times more than here. This is my personal craft work, these bread boxes. I have my own stamp for them. That is a guarantee. It takes me 1 month. It cost quite a lot there. Pieces of decorative and applied arts can be created by an artist, often with academic training. Crafts are always based on the traditions of a particular area. In the old days, entire villages would work side by side, sharing ideas and passing on their knowledge to their children. Artists came together to form craftsmen cooperatives, and whole factories were opened. Craft is both a profession and a source of income. It is also a part of industry, including the arts. This is a common question, and I always answer it by talking about firewood. Why does nobody make a fuss about firewood? If you travel around, in our region for one, you'll see birches that are still there as they have always been. Neither the firewood harvesters, nor the Chudovsky plywood factory, nor we, craftsmen, although there are over 100 of us in this area, could depopulate birch trees that have always grown here and will keep growing. So in this sense, the 21st century is no different from the centuries that preceded or will follow it.